our presentation. Our presentation is the future of mobility from safety and operational perspectives. Let us go through. First, I just to try to present myself to you. Basically, I'm a civil engineer, as Dr. Majid mentioned. I shifted early in my career to transportation, and I have a passion for transportation planning and transportation engineering a long time back. And I am also I worked also in private sector, public sector, and in the universities. Our presentation today will have this outline. We will talk about traffic safety, operational aspects, demand and supply, TDM and TSM, which is travel demand management and transportation system management. And then we will conclude with future of mobility, which is our main topic. So let us start now with the main topics that we will look into today. We will, of course, in the middle and the core of our presentation is the future of mobility. We will talk also about safety, operation, MaaS, which is mobility as a service, travel demand and supply, TDM and TSM options, transit-oriented developments, TODs, transportation management, and smart cities. These are the main topics that we are talking about today. I hope that you will enjoy these topics through the presentation. Let us start with the wider picture. The wider picture, of course, when we talk about future of mobility, we are talking about artificial intelligence, development needs, information communication technologies, system limitations, environmental changes, Internet of Things, management strategies, big data, improvement challenges, transportation policies, and you name it. I mean, all of these are part of our discussion. Starting with the mobility, our main topic. Mobility, what is mobility? If we start with this simple question, what is mobility? There are several definitions for this word. Mobility can be defined as the ability to move or be moved freely and easily. This is one very general definition of mobility. The second one, some people are also define it as a measure of the extent to which something is mobile. And also it can be defined as the movement of people or things. So these definitions will give us the picture of what is we mean by mobility and what is the difference between mobility and transportation. Because there is a difference. Transportation describes the act of moving something or someone, whereas mobility describes the ability of a person to move or to be moved. So the important difference here is the word ability. It's the ability of people to move, whereas transportation is the movement, movement of people or goods. So transportation is something that you do versus mobility, which is something that you have. And this is also related, when we will see later in the presentation, also related to the ownership of transportation mode. In transportation, you have to own the vehicle. In mobility, you don't need to own something. You just have the ability to move through the system. Quickly, we will look at what is traffic safety in relation to traffic operation, just to have a very general view of this. We have, of course, traffic safety on one side, and we have traffic operation on the other side. I'll try to make it simple, but those two factors actually are linked together. However, traffic safety would look at the safe movement of people, which might be contradicting with traffic operation, which is looking at the level of service of the operation. So traffic operation, we will need higher speeds, fast movement, so that we have a very good level of service. We will come to this level of service in the advance of the presentation. Whereas traffic safety, we need to have a calm traffic so that we don't have accidents, we don't have incidents. So actually they are related to each other, but they are apart from each other because of this difference. So let us start with traffic safety. What are the basics? Road traffic safety refers, I think there is someone opening the. Can you please mute your Dr. Majid? I think somebody is not muting. Yes, now it's okay. Road traffic safety refers to the method and measures used to prevent road users from being killed or seriously injured. This is the general road traffic safety definition. Typical road users, of course, include pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, vehicles, passengers, horse riders, passengers of on-road public transport, which is mainly buses and trams. The hierarchy of road safety improvements, we can put it in this hierarchy. The first one is the sustainable prevention of serious injury and death crashes. Second hierarchy is the real-time risk reduction, which involves, of course, providing users at severe risk with a specific warning to enable them to take mitigation action. And the third one is reducing the crash risk, which involves applying the road design standards and guidelines. All this is the basics that is in the traffic safety, which is the traditional approach. Of course, the sources are given underneath for more details on these subjects. If we look at the new trends, and this simple comparison here, we can see that over 60 years, the trend has been changed, and this is very simple comparison between 1959 and 2019 over 60 years. Here in 1959, the trend was look twice before you cross the street. In 2019, think twice before you build the street. So it is completely changing. The trend is completely changing. So because of this, there is something that they call it Vision Zero, which is introduced by ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers. In 2020, last year, ITE launched its Vision Zero Standing Committee. This committee is to aggressively advance the goals of the Vision Zero and towards zero death. Now we are talking about Vision Zero, which is no more traffic death at all. This is, of course, the vision, which is started 2020. This committee involves partners from a variety of public, private, and other non-profit organizations, as well as the passionate volunteers from ITE's own membership. Vision Zero is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. So this is the new vision now. We don't want to have any, what is the difference now between this and the previous one? Vision Zero is a wholly different approach to safety planning than the traditional practice, starting with the fact that it's focused on fatality and seriously injured elimination rather than reduction. So we need to eliminate the fatalities. The traditional approach, of course, if you look at this table or diagram, the traditional approach, traffic deaths are inevitable. In the Vision Zero, traffic deaths are preventable. This is the difference in the approach. In traditional approach, perfect human behavior is assumed. In the Vision Zero, integrated human failing in the approach. In traditional approach, also prevent collisions. Here in Vision Zero, prevent fatal and severe crashes. So as you can see from all these points, individual responsibility, system approach, saving lives is expensive, saving lives is not expensive. So these are the differences between this and this. And of course, we have to consider also what is called the 6 E's, in the consideration of Vision Zero, which is education, emergency response, engineering, enforcement, evaluation, and equity. So Vision Zero in general identifies two primary distinctions between Vision Zero and the current safety planning procedures or programs paradigm. First of all, Vision Zero acknowledges that traffic death and severe injuries are preventable and set the goal of eliminating both in a set period of with a clear measurable strategies. Vision Zero also is a multidisciplinary approach. It combines all the approaches or the stakeholders, bringing together diverse and necessary stakeholders to address the complex problem. So this is the vision in general. Of course, internationally, the United Nations Road Safety Conventions, United Nations took this responsibility on international scale and put all these conventions from 1968 up to 1970. There are, as you can see here, seven conventions only in these 2 years, just to take care of this factor, because it's very important in the operation of traffic on the streets. United Nations also started an action, a decade of action for road safety, and this is started in March 2010, and that was for 10 years from 2011 to 2020, which finished already in May last year. The goal was to stabilize and reduce the forecast level of road traffic deaths around the world. It was in the beginning, in 2011, when it was started, the vision was to reduce, according to this figure, as you can see, to reduce 5 million lives to be saved. It was estimated, actually the conclusion by the end of the decade was not as that optimistic as what was started, and we will see some of the results in the next slides. But that was the vision. The vision was to reduce 5 million, was to save 5 million lives from traffic accidents, from road traffic accidents. So the decade of action for road safety was based on 5 components: road safety management, which is a very important one. This is the first one. And safer roads and mobility, safer vehicles, safer road users, and post-crash responses. Of course, as you can see here, it's depending on all these things: management, mobility, vehicles, road users, and post-crash response, in order to mitigate what will happen. And this was a decade of action. What were the challenges in this? Is that according to a global status report on road safety, road traffic crashes take the lives of nearly 1.3 million every year and injure 20 to 50 million more. More than 90% of road traffic deaths and injuries occur in low-income and middle-income countries, which have only 48% of the world's registered vehicles. You can see here, 90% is a very high percentage in these income classes. If no action is taken, road traffic crashes are predicted to result in a death of around 1.9 million people annually by 2020, which is last year. So more challenges on this is that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development recognizes that road safety is a prerequisite to ensure healthy lives, promoting well-being, and making cities inclusive, safe, and resilient and sustainable. The decade of action actually started in 2010, in March, assembled in 2010 and started 2011, to concentrate on all these factors, and guided by the global plan. The decade of action offers a framework for policy, practice, and advocacy to help countries achieve the sustainable development goals. Several countries around the world were working together on this framework, on this decade of action for road safety, and there were this is actually giving us the results. The results actually are not very much promising, but if you can see here, The factors that are considered, the global population, the death, estimated number of road traffic deaths in millions, death rate per 100,000 population, and proportion of death among vulnerable road users, elderly people. Most of the numbers, as a comparison between 2008 and 2017, is going up. However, there is only one promising factor that in our region, Eastern Mediterranean region, if you can see this line, which is highlighted in the table, it was in 2008, it was 32.2. In 2017, it was 18, which is almost half, reduced by half. But of course, for the other regions are all increasing or slightly increasing. But the good thing is that in our region, it is reduced to half. The results also saying that reduction in road traffic deaths and injuries are possible. However, for this to happen in the next decade, countries need to follow these advices, implement a system approach to road safety, build capacity and engage users, scale up their enforcement activities, design smarter roads, sell safer vehicles, and raise awareness among all road users. This figure here is a comparison between the 2014 and 2017 about number of countries that enacted also already good laws in terms of urban speed, in terms of drink and drive, in terms of seat belts, which is the highest one, in terms of motorcycle helmet, or in terms of child restraining. So if you can see here, for example, for this one, seat belt, more than 200 countries around the world, they have a law for seat belts, which is a very good indication of the decade. So based on the first decade of action for road safety, United Nations started to have a new, which is a second decade of action for road safety from 2021, which is this year, up to 2030. So this period will be the second decade of action for road safety in order to enhance the idea and to enhance the system and to encourage countries participating in this decade of action to reduce traffic deaths and injuries by at least 50%, which is the vision for this decade, which is starting this year. Member states, of course, are called upon to take action throughout 40 points. Part of these points are given here. The list is longer than this, but mainly it is about strengthening road safety laws and law implementation, which is very important, monitoring and evaluation of road safety laws and implementation, signing and implementing United Nations road safety policies, rules, and regulations, integrating road safety in planning, which is very important, conducting awareness campaigns for road safety, strengthening pre-hospital care for road safety, for road traffic accident, which is on the spot, and providing rehabilitation and care for those who suffer road traffic accidents, which is after the accident, sharing best practice bilaterally, regionally, and internationally, and finally increasing investment for road safety. This is the vision for the second decade of action for road safety. Road safety statistics, as you can see here, that this is part of also of the statistics that is from the first decade. Road traffic deaths 1.35 million, which is a high number. The vulnerable road users are 54% of all those road users, which this means that we need to take care of this kind of road users. And 22 countries are working on this legislation. This is what we are talking about till now is a traffic safety aspect, and now we are going to operational aspect. So what do we mean by operational aspect? Operation is how traffic is moving. So let us start with this, with basic information about the operation. So the first thing is that we are talking about is the need for travel. Why are we traveling? And Why are we traveling in general? The need for travel is that because we have trip origins and trip destination, we need to move from one point to another. What we have as origin, of course, we have the home, the first point of origin that for all our trips from the morning. We have work, we have school, shopping, and we have leisure. These are the major origin destination for our trips. We have movement from home to work, work to home, in the reverse direction. We have movement from home to school. We have trips from home to leisure, from home to shopping. All this, we are calling it home-based trips in transportation planning. So the other side, if we are going to move from work, we are going to school, from work to shopping, from work to leisure. These are the work-based trips. So we are distinguishing between home-based trips and work-based trips. All other trips are distinguished as other trips. We need also to know the time of travel. And to give you an idea about what I mean by time of travel, which is peak period and off-peak period, we will go to this traffic volume profile. This is a very simplified volume profile, which is showing the traffic during the weekday and during the weekend for 24 hours. You can see that the peaks, we have a morning peak, we have a lunchtime peak, and we have an evening peak. Of course, most of the time, weekend peaks are less than the weekday peaks. This is what we mean by the volume profile, which is the time of travel. We also need to know something about the trip type, which we said before. I mean, work trips, shopping trips, social recreational trips. This is the type of the trip. Of course, there is a land use mix in developments, in complexes. We have residential, we have commercial, educational, etc. So the trip generation estimate, based on all these factors, based on the need for travel, based on peak period or off-peak period, based on trip types and land use mix, we have to have a trip generation estimation. And for all the land uses, the total trip generation is the summation of trip generation for each land use from 1 to n for that development. If we will have this number, this will give us the basic for the demand, which we are going to compare it to the supply. So now demand and supply. What do you mean by travel demand? The way to calculate travel demand, this is important in the operation because we need to know what demand that we have on the network. First, we are starting with the land use type and category, different categories, different types, quantities. We will have a trip generation rate because each of these land uses, whatever the quantity of the land use and the type of the land use, there is a trip generation rate that will give us an idea about how many trips will be generated by this land use for this quantity. So we are using usually a trip generation manual. Either here locally we are using RTA, Dubai Trip Generation Parking Rates manual. And internationally, we have also a trip generation manual by the ITE, by Institute of Transportation Engineers. And this will give us the estimate of generated trips. This is the travel demand in general. So what is the supply to serve this demand? Supply, of course, we have roads, freeways, expressways, major arterial roads, minor arterial roads, collectors, distributors, local roads, etc. We have structures like bridges, ramps, loops, tunnels, underpasses, gantries, traffic signals, signs, all the structures that is needed for the infrastructure of the road network. And we have the public transport, of course, which is the buses, taxis, and metro, tram, high-speed trains, water transport. All these are the public transport. All those three inputs are the supply for our network, which will cater for the demand. So what balance we need to have on this demand versus supply? Demand actually is the number of trips that needs to utilize the transportation network in order to fulfill different travel requirements, as we said before. On the other side, we have the supply, which is the available capacity on the facilities, within the transportation network that can accommodate and the anticipated traffic demand. So we need always to have a balance between these two factors, because if we will have demand much more than the supply, what the result will be traffic congestion. And this is obvious. And if we have traffic, we have supply much more than demand, then we will have something like, we call it over design, because we don't need all these facilities in this case. So we have to have this critical balance between the two factors. The challenge here is that the urban planning as a planning factor, the urban planning is to provide the base land use mix, type and quantity to achieve optimum benefits based on the market needs. Of course, this goal in urban planning is the goal of all the developers that are trying to develop their developments in order to achieve the optimum benefits based on the market need. On the other side, you have transportation planning, and of course, by the way, the transportation planning and urban planning are always going together, parallel to each other and coordinating with each other. But transportation planning is to provide the best transportation system to achieve optimum benefits based on level of service criteria. Those are the two factors. What is the level of service criteria? We talked about it from the beginning, and we said that we will have some details about it. Level of service criteria, according to the Highway Capacity Manual, HCM, is a qualitative measure used to evaluate the quality of vehicular traffic for a given transportation facility by categorizing traffic flow and assigning quality levels of traffic based on performance measures like vehicle speed, density, congestion, etc. So we have 6 levels of service, starting from level of service A, which indicates free flow, as can be seen in the picture here. We have level of service B, which is reasonable free flow. We have level of service C, stable operation. Still, we have stable operation in level of service C. In level of service D, we have borderline unstable, starting to be unstable. Level of service E is extremely unstable, and level of service F is the breakdown, which is complete blockage, complete stoppage. So of course, for design, we are always going to level of service D or C. D if we are going to optimize, or C if we are going to give better quality of flow. But of course, level A and level B are not recommended in terms of cost. And of course, level of service S is a complete breakdown, so it's not recommended also. Planning, as we said before, urban planning and transportation planning are going always together and related to each other throughout the work of the urban planner and the transportation planner. This is a planning objective, and this is also a planning objective. So what we need to have, we have a balance between both of them. So finally, we can reach optimum transportation system to serve both planning objectives, this one and this one. So based on what we said so far, let us look at the transportation land use life cycle. What is the life cycle between transportation and land use? We will start, of course, with transportation improvements to get better accessibility in our road network. This will lead us to increased land value, which is more land uses, and this will lead us to increased generated trips. This will cause more traffic congestion, and then this will deteriorate the level of service more, and then we need more improvements. So this is the life cycle of the transportation and land use, and this is what we call it the traditional approach. You improve, and then land use will be more, and then traffic will be increased, and then the generated traffic will come to the deteriorate level of service, and then you improve again, and then you will go through this cycle up to infinity. The new trend in this, concluding remarks from this actually, is that traditional approach is becoming ineffective due to the higher demand and limited supply, because each time you are improving, each time you are having more demand, more attracted demand to the facility that has been improved with a limited supply on that facility. There is a need to consider Accordingly, there is a need to consider more innovative approaches to resolve this issue from operation point of view, and these approaches need to be applied in either the demand or to the supply, or even to both of them, in order to have this balance between them. So here we use the strategies of travel demand management and transportation system management to consider it as an alternative approach to this traditional approach. So what is travel demand management and what is transportation system management? Let us see the first one. Travel demand management, by definition, it describes the strategies and policies aiming to achieve more efficient use of transportation resources and to reduce vehicle trips by giving priority to public transit, car sharing, carpooling, etc. And I think this is obvious in everyday life. And the important thing here, it puts focus on the movement of people and goods rather than on motor vehicles. And this is going back to the first definition that we give for mobility, which is the focus of movement of people and goods rather than on the motor vehicle itself, rather than the ownership. It's the ability to move rather than the ownership. Also, in other words, travel demand management is the application of strategies and policies to reduce travel demand. We need to reduce travel demand or to redistribute this demand either in space or time. So the emphasis here is to manage the demand, manage the travel demand, in order that we can have the supply serving this demand. On the other hand, transportation system management, which is a bit different than this, transportation system management is defined as covered broad range of engineering practices, non-facility and low capital cost. This is very important difference between TSM and TDM that may be implemented to increase capacity and safety under the prevailing condition. So in here, we are using the transportation system that we have. We are not controlling the demand, we are not managing the demand, but we are managing the system in order to make the system more beneficial for the demand that we have. TSM, in other terms, in other words, mobilizes both demand and supply optimization more effectively to capitalize on existing highway and the transit facilities. And the basic input, of course, for TDM and TSM are four main basic inputs in order to implement or in order to select the strategy which is more beneficial to the specific case that we have. We have first, we have to answer why. What is the purpose of travel? Is it work, education, shopping, recreation? The second question or second input is when. During which period of day? Is it peak, off-peak? Is it weekly or weekend, weekday or weekend? Also, we need to understand where the destination of travel is: urban, suburban, rural. Each one of these will have different implementation and different usage and different necessary actions. We need to also answer the how, mode of travel. Is it walking, cycling, public transport, car? These inputs together, of course, there is an overlap between travel demand management and transportation system management, and the area of overlap, we will see it in the next slide. Again, this is travel demand management, and this is transportation system management, which are completely different between each of them, but there is something. What are the categories for these strategies? The categories actually for these strategies, we can put it in mainly in three different categories. First one is to improve alternatives to single occupant vehicle, SOV. We call it single occupant vehicle. Second category is to have incentives and disincentives in the usage of the system. The third one is alternative work arrangements. These are the main categories of TDM and TSM strategies. If we are going into the subcategories, in the first one, we have transit improvements. transit improvements, of course, it's a transit system improvements in terms of buses, taxis, or all the transit system. Car van pooling, to encourage car and van pooling so that we can reduce the number of cars on the system, on the road network. Pedestrian cycling facilities to encourage people to use other than facilities other than motorized facilities, and innovative transportation facilities. The second category, which is the incentive and disincentives, we have preferential high occupancy vehicle treatments, and we will see what is exactly meant by this. Preferential high occupancy vehicle treatment. I think most of us saw this on the street of in Dubai. It is already there. Bus only lane or bus and taxi lane. So we are encouraging high occupancy vehicles, which is the HOV, to use the network more than the single occupant vehicle. Transit and ride sharing incentives. We provide incentive to people who are using transit or ride sharing in terms of ticket price, in terms of other incentives to share the trip between two or more people. Parking supply and pricing management. This is also another factor. If we are reducing the parking supply or changing the pricing management of the parking, then we will reduce the usage of the system. Then we can control the demand. Toll and congestion pricing is also another factor, and the incentive and disincentive. SALIC is one example of that. The third category is variable work hours, alternative work schedule, telecommuting, which is very important. And you saw that, and we all see that in the last year during the pandemic, telecommuting started to be much more necessary than before. And work at home options, of course, it is part of the transportation management. So as you can see here, the first category, the first group of categories is all of them is TSM, transportation system management, because it deals with the system. The last category is travel demand management, because it's managing the demand. And the middle one is the combination between TDM and TSM. So the main options that we have available for us as TDM and TSM for our work in the management of road network is public transport HOV facilities. We have congestion pricing. We have alternative work arrangement. We have parking management. We have pedestrian cycling facilities, and we have car van. These main options, if we look at, for example, this public transport HOV facilities, as you can see here on the left side, this express lane is reserved for people who are 2+. 2+ means that the driver plus one person, 2 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. That is encouraging those people to use this lane and give them some incentive, some advantage in terms of time, in terms of other factors to encourage them to use this HOV plus 2 or 2+. Bus only lane, which is now being implemented in several parts in Dubai. If we go to the other one, congestion pricing, we have a very good example of this cordon for what they call it, the congestion zone. This is in London. This is the beginning of the congestion zone. As you can see here, they are putting on the pavement the letter C in a red circle, which is the congestion zone, and this is the sign for it, congestion charging central zone. So in this area, once you enter from any of these roads leading to this area, you have to pay, you have to be registered on the system. And by this, they are keeping the core of the city of London on a relatively low traffic volume because of this cordon of congestion. Alternative work arrangement, as we said before, staggering working hours, telecommuting, working from home, flexible work schedule. All these are alternative work arrangements. Parking management, we have control parking, parking control. We have parking layout is also a factor. We have mechanical parking that is in use in several cities around the world. Also, of course, here in Dubai, I think we have 2 or 3 locations for this mechanical parking. We also have shared parking. What we mean by shared parking is that the same parking space can be used by business and residential in different time periods during the day. We have parking duration and turnover also as a factor to control parking. And we have park and ride facilities, which facilitate the movement of people between different modes. You can park your car and ride other facility like public transport. Pedestrian cycling facilities, we have pedestrian crossing, the normal crossing. We have cycle path. We have pedestrian bridges. We have cycle racks, which is, you can see it now in most of the metro stations in Dubai. Car and van pooling, also we have several solutions like car sharing, signs for car sharing to encourage people, van sharing, van pooling, carpool, van pool, bus, school buses also is a very important factor in here. So these are the main options that we have for TDM and TSM. The impact of selected TDM strategies, this is taken actually from a previous study. They found that, it's a study actually done in the States. They found that congestion pricing, 37% vehicle speed increase, 30% decrease in peak period delay, which is considerable, 50% decrease in bus delay, this is in London, and 14 to 30% increase in transit ridership. For high capacity transit, 20 to 72% of new riders shifted mode from single occupant vehicle to high occupant vehicle. Parking management, pricing, and availability strategies, 40 to 50% reduction in parking demand under peak period and long-term parking pricing increases. SOV mode share 16 to 25% lower than when employees paid for parking. And transportation efficient development, 15 to 24% reduction in single occupant vehicle usage, which is a considerable reduction in single occupant vehicle usage on the network. Okay, so now let us have an example of what we said before about the balance between planning objectives, the urban planning objective and transportation planning objectives. We said that we have 2 objectives and has to be, if we combine both of those objectives to come with an example, we will see that we have transit-oriented development. We call it TOD, transit-oriented development, and we will see what is the meaning of this transit-oriented development. Of course, this kind of planning, or this idea of planning, is an excellent idea to plan our developments, because it will depend on mainly on transit and the movement of people, which will serve the goals of the mobility, future mobility. Transit-oriented development is a synergism between land uses and the transit that has compact mixture of uses, pedestrian-friendly, and support a variety of transit options. Transit stations are usually in the center of the TOD. Mainly, that's why they are calling it transit-oriented development. We have a transit station, and then we built on this station. It will increase the transit ridership because people will have direct access to the transit service, and will improve air quality because it will reduce the number of private vehicles, provide better opportunities for neighborhood connectivity, and also reduce, of course, traffic congestion. So all these are advantages of transit-oriented developments. Transit-oriented development generally provide a mix of residential and commercial uses that is planned to make public transit successful. This is the most important factor here, enhancing the convenience and safety of walking and cycling, and to provide for a vibrant and livable community. Several examples we have it here now, and this is a new idea of planning that is going to replace the old traditional planning fashion. What are the benefits of this transit-oriented development? The first one is it creates more street activities around the location of transit station. Second is reduces the dependency on private cars by increasing the ridership on transit modes. Also provides opportunities for revitalization of old developments and neighborhoods. Encourages community activities, entertainments, and recreational sports. Enhances development value due to the high density and compact nature. Saves the cost to build and maintain roads and other infrastructure because the transit is in the core of the development, so you don't need to build more roads to connect people to the transit. And then enhances the environment due to the significant reduction in gas emission from cars, which is obvious. These are the benefits of the transit-oriented development. Dr. Majid, I think we will have this video now, and this. So we will have a video about automated travel demand management. I hope that you will enjoy. Sorry. Sure. Yeah. Okay, so let us go to the last part of our presentation today, which is the core of the title, Future of Mobility. We will start with something called Urban Mobility Index. Urban Mobility Index actually is an index that is based on, this is a study by Arthur D. Little, Urban Mobility Index version 3. The index uses 27 criteria to assess the mobility maturity, innovativeness, and performance of 100 cities worldwide. The mobility score per city ranges from 0 to 100 index points. The overall results find that most cities still need to work intensively to improve to their mobility system. The global average score of the 100 cities surveyed was 42.3 out of 100 points. Only 10 cities out of the 100 cities scored more than 50 points. So the results indicate that even the highest ranking cities have considerable potential for improvement for mobility. This one figure from the same study showing us the top 10 cities based on this scale from 100 to from 0 to 100, and these are the city in ranking. As you can see here, that there are average cities here in orange, and there are above average, just the 10 cities here or the above average, and we have cities below average. These are the 100 cities with the 42.3 global average. So there is always room for improvement. What are the challenges? The mobility vision and policies do not cover the requirements. Lack of integration between transport modes, management of urban mobility is still fragmented and needs to be more innovative. This is what we call the first and last mile in transportation. If there is a lack of integration between transport modes, then the person who is trying to plan his or her trip from the origin to the destination will be interrupted. So that's why we need to have integration between all modes so that the person can start from the origin, walking to any given metro station, for example, and taking the metro, going to the other side, to the other metro station, and then from there either taking a taxi, or all these facilities has to be integrated with each other, or maybe taking bus feeders from the destination metro station to the final destination. Mobility system key players need to work closely to foster lateral learning and to develop innovative mobility solutions. This is very important because mobility system key players are different. Some of them, as you can see now, even scooters are on the map of transportation. So bicycles, walking, buses, taxis, metro, tram, all these has to be working together. The future mobility system needs to be intermodal, personalized, convenient, connected, and sustainable. So this code is taken from the Future of Mobility version 3, March 2018, says the solution for the future is an interconnected multimodal mobility system with increased convenience and efficiency tailored to the city's growth project and balancing economic development and well-being. This is one of the most important statements in this report. And the key strategic dimensions are visionary strategy, mobility supply management, mobility demand management, and public transport funding. These are the key strategic dimensions to overcome these challenges. Of course, if you will look at the mobility throughout the centuries, the first one, which is called Mobility 1, is 18th century and earlier. The second one, which is Mobility 2, as you can see that the train started to have its influence, which is 19th century. Mobility 3, they call it like when we have the cars and airplanes, and this is the 20th century. And now mobility 4, which is started like the new mobility system, interconnected with all modes, which is the 21st century and beyond. So how can we go towards smart mobility, which is for mobility for the future? First, we have to set smart goals. Second, we have to understand the smart city concept. And we have, after that, we have to go to smart mobility. So how to set smart goals? The goals has to be specific. The goal should be as specific as possible to fulfill the requirements from the system. It has to be measurable, should be measurable to provide a specific feedback from the system, should be achievable, of course, because it has to ensure reliability of the system, and it has to be realistic. The goals time frame should be realistic as much as possible, and has to be timely also. So if all this, it will be, if the goal will be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, it will be a smart goal. And smart city concept, on the other side, is that smart city is a designation given to a city that incorporates information and communication technology, which we call it ICT, to enhance the quality and performance of urban services such as energy, transportation, and utilities in order to reduce resource consumption, wastage, and overall cost. Smart cities are cities that utilize technology to make the daily life more sustainable, efficient, transparent, and intelligent. Smart cities depend on smart technology, Internet of Things, and application of geographic information system, the GIS software, to contextualize a massive amount of collected big data. Smart cities are people-focused. This is very important. Making a city smarter and is all about improving people's experiences of the city so that it better meets their needs. Examples, smart cities around the world. As you can see, several cities are considered as smart cities because they are applying the smart city concept in their daily life. Dubai also has its own, what's called Smart Dubai. Dubai has launched various initiatives while it's integrating the technologies such as information communication technology and Internet of Things to its hard and soft infrastructures. Further information about this can be seen in Dubai, the Kia, which is Smart Dubai, and this is the website of Smart Dubai, www.smartdubai.ae. So what are the components of the smart city? Of course, components of smart city is smart economy, smart government, a smart society, smart living, smart environment, and finally, smart mobility. So let us go to this component within a smart city. What is meant by smart mobility? Smart mobility refers to use of different transportation modes with or even instead of owning a gas-powered vehicle. So this is very important difference. It's the use of different transportation modes or even instead of owning the gas-powered vehicle. You don't need to own, but you need to have the ability to use, the ability to move. This can be achieved in different forms such as public transport, ride sharing, walking, biking. The need for smart mobility came out due to the increase in traffic congestion and its related side effects on pollution, fatalities, and wasted time. So whenever we can apply smart mobility principles in a city, though we will have all these advantages of smart mobility. Smart mobility is a new and revolutionary way of thinking about transportation challenges to achieve a new vision like zero emission, zero accident, zero ownership. Smart mobility is well recognized as one of the major components of smart city concept. The key principles, of course, of a smart city is flexibility, efficiency, integration, clean technology, safety, accessibility, and social benefits. If these principles will be able to be applied, then we will move towards the building of a smart mobility system. And we will have a mobility as a service, which is called MaaS. Mobility as a service, of course, is a type of service through which joint digital channels enable the user to plan, book, and pay for multiple mobile services. As you can see now, we are using these systems. We can book through mobile applications like Uber, like other smart movements like the new scooter system in Dubai. The concept is a shift from personal owned modes of transportation and towards mobility provided as a service. This is enabled by combining transportation services for public and private transportation use through a unified gateway that creates and manages the trips which users can pay for with a single account. This is the ultimate goal of the mobility as a service. The key concept behind mobility as a service is to offer travelers mobility solutions based on their travel needs. Specialist urban mobility applications are also expanding their offering to enable mobility as a service, such as transit, Uber, and Lyft. A strategic path for this is to rethink the system, work towards a more sustainable mobility system, and network the system which works towards the integrated mobility with the customer at the center. The key themes are service model rather than ownership model, this is very important point. It's a service model rather than ownership model. Shared vehicles as opposite to individual ownership. Payment only for what you use. So that you don't need to own the vehicle, you need to use a vehicle. We need to have the accessibility to use the transportation mode. Many modes are available, and several are also still emerging, like car sharing, bike sharing, ride sharing, microtransit, on-demand ride services, e-scooters, shared mobility also, like the shared use of vehicle, buses, and other modes. All these ideas are serving the smart mobility. The term shared mobility also includes various forms of car sharing, bike sharing, ride sharing, carpooling, van pooling, on-demand ride services, and we have also here on-demand bus services as applied in Dubai by RTA. This is one of the modes that, as you can see here, it's on-demand. I think most of us saw this on the streets, and this is also going now distributed all over areas on smart cities. Scooters. E-scooters by RTA is a project that allows companies private sector to operate. Electric scooters. 5 districts in Dubai are now initiating this. 5 different approved operators like Careem and others. Landmark and guidance signboards for scooters, trucks near the metro stations or in another state. Rules and legislations to achieve the general safety requirements are being established. Other futuristic transport modes are also going into use in the future. Examples for this is Hyperloop, skyports, autonomous vehicles, flying vehicles. Let us see what is the name by Hyperloop. I think most of us heard about Hyperloop companies that are working on several studies, feasibility studies for Hyperloop here in Dubai as part of Dubai Future accelerators. The technology will impact town planning, of course, and revisualization of the mobility. There are lines that are now being studied, and the speed, of course, is high speed. The technology uses electromagnetic propulsion system to accelerate the movement of goods and services through the vacuum tube. The system is designed to assist levitation of capsules slightly off the track. So the idea is that there is a capsule that is moving in the vacuum and up to a speed of 1,200 kilometers per hour. Of course, this is a very high speed. Now they are starting with lower speed than this, and I think recently they successfully managed to have a trip done by a prototype Hyperloop, which was very successful for people. Previously, they were using it for goods, but now it is for people also. Skypod is another project that is going to be constructed in the near future here in Dubai, which is a small-sized, lightweight transport mode fitted with steel wheels to move on suspended rails. There is a plan to have this like this one in different parts of the city. They can travel at relatively high speed, up to 150 kilometers per hour, and they have a stylish design and innovative system to assist smooth mobility. Each unit can accommodate up to 5 riders. Another one is the autonomous vehicle, and the autonomous vehicle actually is already tested here in Dubai, and this is one that is tested in the downtown. Autonomous vehicle are part of RTA's initiative in support to Dubai Future Accelerators, designed to travel short and medium distances in dedicated lanes, and will accommodate 25% of trips in Dubai by 2030. This is the vision. Fitted with a battery that supports 3 hours of operation, the speed relatively low because of the goal of this usage, which is 20 kilometers per hour within the development. In Masdar also in Abu Dhabi, this is being used now. Contributes to achieving the integration of public transit mode. It can move between transit stations, and it can move people from one station to another. Flying vehicles also in the vision of RTA. Flying vehicles actually about 2 years ago, I think it was tested in the area of Jumeirah, in Jumeirah city, town Jumeirah, that is town Jumeirah. And this flying car is a type of personal air vehicle or roadable aircraft that provides door-to-door transportation, both ground and air. 2017, RTA introduces new flying drones, which is the Autonomous Air Taxi, AATS, expected to become the world's first self-flying taxi service, which is environmentally friendly, powered by electricity. The prototype is flying time is 30 minutes, and the cruise speed is 50 kilometers per hour, which is good, up to a maximum airspeed of 100 kilometers per hour. So finally, what is the concluding remarks on all what we said? Urban planning and transportation planning objectives needs to be considered in an optimized way to achieve best operational benefits for transportation system users, for their communities. Encouraging people to divert to use HOV instead of using SOV is highly important and influential in improving transportation system performance. Transit-oriented development is an extremely efficient planning approach to alleviate traffic congestion and to improve road users' experience, and the implementation of TDM, TSM options is vital on the way to achieve smart mobility and effectively and efficiently, and smart mobility is an influential cornerstone within the smart city concept and one of its important components. So I will end up with the quote by the late Mahatma Gandhi said, "The future depends on what you do today." And a developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation. This is by planner whose name is Gustav Petro. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have any question, we are ready to answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, for the very informative presentation. Looking for mostly the future perspective of transportation. I have several questions. So the first question is, in the middle of the presentation, you was mentioning about there is some transportation levels of A and B. Do you have any information about which countries they reach the transportation level A and B?
Sorry, I didn't follow. You are talking about the which question? Sorry.
Okay, so there is one of questions is coming. Which countries reach transportation level A and B?
For crowded cities like Jeddah and Riyadh?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah, actually, the crowded cities, of course, the transportation management is very important, and that's why we are talking about smart mobility. Actually, it's not at zero cost. It has to have a cost, but the benefits from it will compensate the cost that is being used to develop the system. Because if we are talking about the system analysis, there are costs and there are benefits. So the benefits that will come from implementing these transportation management solutions will compensate the cost that is being expended on this. And you are giving very good example, like NEOM, for example. 2 days ago, we saw that the new development announced inside NEOM is a very good example of what we are saying, like the smart developments. And NEOM is considering a new development inside NEOM, which is they call it the line, which is within. It is to be used by people. Mainly pedestrian movement, no cars at all. There's no roads, sidewalk, only walking path for people. So this will reduce the pollution. This will improve the environment. This is a very good example of using these techniques in building smart cities.
Okay. So that's thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, for that. Now there is another question: is okay, more people, that means more cars, which means more roads, which means increased knowledge of transportation management. Is that true? What do you think?
Again, this question I didn't hear you.
Okay, so it's more people. It means more cars.
Okay. More people
which mean more roads.
That mean more, yes.
And increase the knowledge of transportation management. So is that true? What do you think? If you allow me, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, of course, more people means more demand. But if we will manage this demand in a way that we can encourage people to have car sharing, carpooling, van pooling, using the transit, using other modes of transport instead of using single occupant vehicle. This, of course, will alleviate the problems. But I don't know what is the meaning of this increase the knowledge of transportation management.
I think it's a question here is relating that, as you know, there is growing over the population on the earth, that it means there is high increase in the number of cars and transportations. And if there is more transportation needed, it means we need to build more bridges, have tunnels, have highways, have roads, which is, it's the knowledge of transportation. It's now has become a demand. So today what you are sharing is about different systems in
Correct.
traditional system or a new systems is today's a demand in the smart mobility in transportation. And I think also to continue in the same concept, I don't think only a good system of transportation and artificial intelligence and mobility, it can work only separately without changing the mindset and culture of the people. So it's working as hand to hand. If we create the
This is
most
very important.
newest trends and technologies, and we create the most highest efficient, productive mobility systems, and we have the best roads or bridges or tunnels, still the culture is playing an major factor impacting what we are already contributing to the economy of the cities. So I believe the need also of the change of the mindset of the people and culture as well. It is very, very important. Now, when I speak about the change of the mindset and the culture, it's not only on the behavior on how to deal with transportation, though I need to purchase a car or I can use public transportation. This is just an example. Passing the roads from the crossway. So I pass from this area or I pass from any way at any place in the street. So this type of culture, when I ride a bus, do I treat the bus as my asset or I don't care and I damage the bus? So it's this type of cultural mindset. This is very important to be changed. It's need a lot of awareness, and I think again from the Sustainable Development Goals and the UN is emphasized not only in the safety and operation, but also in the education and awareness, which is related to the knowledge of increasing the knowledge of transportation management systems, which we need to enhance our communities, cities, and cultures. Another point is, I will say it, but please don't laugh anyone. Again, is we need to reduce down the increased number of the population. Our Earth, it will be the same. It will not be increased. So we need, it's like in a way to understand that the resources exist on the Earth. It will not increase. This is why we are going now for solar. We are going for trying to be recycling water. We are trying to do all of this one to try to keep our resources for the next generations. Yeah. But I think if we continue in the same growth of population, I think Earth will be enough.
Yeah. The idea is that we don't need to build more supply if we are going through this smart implementation of mobility, because the traditional approach of providing more supply in the system, more supply in the infrastructure means, like they're building new roads, building new interchanges. This will all overburden the economy, and at the same time will encourage the single occupant vehicle usage. Here we are trying to change the mindset, as you said, to change the mindset, to share the mobility. Instead of, for example, instead of owning a vehicle, you can plan your life to use multimodal system of movement instead of owning a vehicle. This is one saving for the individual. On the other side, you don't need, for each and every increase in demand, you need to increase the supply, because you will reach a point that the supply will be much more than it is needed and will not be economically feasible. So this mindset changes has to be understood by people, people has to be convinced by this. But of course, there are other factors, like, for example, the weather. If the weather, for example, in our country here, where we are living now, the weather sometimes in the summer is very hot. So you need to have solutions to encourage people through several initiatives or solutions, how to plan your way, your trip from the origin to destination, Despite this hot weather or difficult weather, sometimes in other countries there are difficult, challenging winters with snow, with very cold weather like US or Canada or Europe. So the planner, I mean, both this planning sides, the urban planner and the transportation planner needs to work together to have this change in mindset, to have people encouraged to use this smart mobility or thinking of using a smart way of travel.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad. I have several of questions, so or not questions, some of them comments. In the future, if we have a flying cars, so it means a transportation management system, it will not be more in use. What do you think about that?
Actually, no, actually, this we will still need to manage the system, because even if we will have flying cars is one of the modes that is part of the smart mobility, and the flying cars by itself needs management, and you cannot have the system arbitrary without management. So you have to manage this, even if it is flying.
Okay, thank you very much. Another comment. There is one comment to say, I think it is in the most Arab countries, it is very difficult to implement that. What do you think about that?
This is what we are saying. This is what we are saying about changing the attitude, changing the way of thinking. So eventually, I believe that it will work. But when it will work, this will depend on the efforts. This will depend on the mutual work of all parties, all stakeholders. If we are saying from now that it's difficult, it will not work. So let us be more proactive, more let us say there are challenges, and we need to resolve these challenges. Why it is difficult? Because maybe it is not normal for us, but with time, as we saw in the change from mobility 1 to mobility 2 to mobility 3 to mobility 4, and that started 18th century, 19th, 20th, and 21st. And we are going towards 22nd century, and it's all going on. So the new thinking and the new understanding of the word mobility, which we started with, which is the ability of people to move. When people will think like this, it will happen. Eventually, it will happen, inshallah.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. And I just want to complement what Dr. Ahmed said into just a small comment. When we talk about today agility, and to be agile, and mobility, and ability to change, because the change is working with agility exactly, we talk about something called is design thinking. So when we talk about design thinking, I would like to address, let's say, the urban planners, the city master planners, the transportation planners. If I ask some people, okay, guys, I want you to build a bridge here, what they do? Anyone he think more about who's the user of this way, who's the user of the bridge, what is the community living surrounding, what is the school there, hospitals there, what is the surrounding community? Or we jump immediately in creating tenders, doing design and building the bridge. Once we operate the bridge or operate the highway road, then increasing of the population, because there is no clear master plan of this area. And then after that, we need to readjust again. We try to readjust, solving a problem of the existence of the bridge, solving a problem existing of a building or towers very close to the bridge, solving already problems of how the people will pass the roads in these areas. So again, in a way, we need to adapt something called the design thinking. And this is a part of the innovation. Which we talk about it today. And a very clear example, if today we bring a group of team is coming from different stakeholders to build a highway or to have a bridge, you need to think about not only for the current time, but you need to look for the vision. Let's say after 20 years, when the this area, the population will increase to double. What will happen in this area? You can't just only give a solution for just what is demand of today, but you will need to think also in a way, into a future way, how you can address future challenges. Okay, so another question, can you talk more, Dr. Ahmad, about the use of what we talk about in different tiers in the transportation system in the field of schools or company transportation buses?
I couldn't understand what's meant by this question. What is the use of tires?
So, Mr. Khan Muhammad, if you can unmute yourself, if you are still with us.
What is actually the meaning of this question? I couldn't understand. He's saying, can you talk more about use of tires?
Yeah, Mr. Khan Muhammad. Sound? Oh, the sound is cutting.
Yeah, I'm talking about the school and tire issue. For example, there's tire quality and the grip of tire and what is the level to use of the group of the tires and what is effect to the environment and how can we prevent the accident through using of this tire, whether we can use the used tire by regrowing up or not. So some like about the use of tires.
I still, I couldn't. Dr. Ahmad, did you get the question?
I couldn't understand. I'm sorry. I could understand only what is the meaning of the use of tires.
Means like it's the safety of the the children's and the passengers.
Can you rephrase it by writing?
Sometimes tires,
because the sound is cutting so much, Mr. Khan, so please write it down.
What is the tips to use the tires? I'm going to write now. Yeah.
Okay, I think Mr. Khan, if you can just drop it in the chat box, because unfortunately we didn't hear it's half of the talk because the sound is cutting. So please drop it down. Now we'll move for another question. Is from Engineer Bara'a. He's saying, do we have any visibility studies? It has been done into this different new system, or it has been implemented?
Where is this question? Sorry.
Okay, so now we talk about different systems in the mobility, and we talk about the most newest trend with high artificial intelligence. So is there a visibility study on how much the cost and the return of investment?
You mean need
how
for
much you spend? How much you spend over the system of transportation management system or the TOD, and then how much is the return? So let's say
Yeah, of course, any application of any of these systems needs a feasibility study. Feasibility will be a sort of cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost of this system versus what are the benefits that will be gained from this system? So from this, which we call it a cost-benefit ratio, this will give you is the project feasible or not. So this will depend on the components, the cost components and the benefit components, and then the study will result in one answer: is the project feasible or not?
Okay, so now to continue in this question, Dr. Ahmad, and I will build in Dr. Osama question before. Dr. Osama is from Saudi Arabia, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and he was asking like, do you think these type of systems can be implemented like in Jeddah or in Riyadh, which is very very crowded cities, but in the same time with low cost? So it's like, again, is something is relate with between is how much I can invest in these systems as a cities, and the return and the benefit over the cities from investment.
Yeah, I think we went through this question before. We said that, of course, for most crowded cities, smart mobility is a very good solution. Smart mobility will, with transportation management, will encourage people to use multimodal transportation system, and will be beneficial to all. So of course, this will resolve the problems or the challenges in crowded cities by decreasing the number of vehicles, SOVs, in comparison with the HOVs, several high occupant vehicles. So this will reduce the demand on the network.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad. I have a comment. It said, I think we need a lot of money to make this happen. And I just want to address something here. I want you really to think about, do you think what we talk about today is that transportation systems and mobility is just in its own self? You take it as just as without the bigger context? I want you guys to think about something. How do you think is the productivity relate to the traffic? How the work of productivity relate to the traffic? How do you think, guys, if in different aspect, how that is can be already make you go back home late? If we don't have this type of mobility and we don't have this type of smart system to manage. So how much time you lose into, you are commuting from your home to the work and from work to home. I just want you to think from different aspect, plus the safety aspect, plus the operational aspect, plus the city investment aspect. How many people do you like to go nowadays for crowded city, heavy crowded city? About the tourism. So I think if we look from these several aspects, we will find it if we apply or we try to implement mobility system, smart systems, it will be a more cheaper, more than the loss we are having every single day in our cities. So actually the mobility and the smart system, it is become necessity. It's not a choice. And just only countries will not adapt, it will fall behind. Cities will not adapt, will fall behind. And this is, you find now there is high already evolution in the industry of transportation and mobility. Why? If I can let you reach in your work in a proper time, then I can take a better productivity from you at the work. Then the work and the business investment will grow. And that if it's grow, again, the full vendor and supplier chain will grow, which is increase the city economy, and the growth of the economy will be higher. Yeah. So I think it's we need to think about it from different aspects. Not only I'm just investing in the infrastructure or the mobility systems, but is in a bigger scope, which is it's be impacting all the full city.
Actually, this is also what you look at the TSM, what we were talking about, transportation systems management. This is a low cost or no cost, they call it sometimes, because this kind of TSM measures or strategies will have sometimes very low cost or no cost just to arrange things together and without introducing any new further supply in the system. So that's why it's a low cost or no cost. It's capitalize on what you have to make it smarter, to make it better without any new investment. So this will give you benefits without investment most of the time.
Thank you very much. I think it's really, I like to really, again, thank all the participants. If any other questions, if you can unmute yourself. I think we go through all what has been mentioned in the questions earlier, written questions. And if you have extra questions, you can unmute yourself and you can ask Dr. Ahmad immediately. And really, I'm so thankful for all of you, because it's very interactive and a lot of comments and questions, which is it is already triggering for our knowledge sharing and expertise, and it's make it, we can, all of us together, we can make a change, because it's not one person, it's not a seminar only, it's not a webinar only, it's not sharing knowledge only. We need to work, all of us together, into making a change in our community in the field of transportation, sustainability, mobility, and most international and best practices into these systems.